Yes, sir, the white meth epidemic has gotten ugly. You know I was going to go there. This out of Naples, Florida. Now, here's a story that hasn't received anywhere near as much attention as it should, but then again, it's about white people, so of course it's going to be swept under the rug. But here at the house that Professor Truth built, we go ahead and expose the ugly, very ugly truth about white criminality and drug abuse in America. 30-year-old Summer Nicole Adamson, who looks like she's 90, was arrested on June 30th in Naples, Florida, just 2 days after her birthday. She faces charges of alleged drug possession, alleged possession of drug paraphernalia, alleged evidence tampering, and illegal smuggling of contraband into a county detention facility. Deputies say that she was being taken into custody late last week after having been pulled over for reportedly breaking into a car. A police corporal who approached her vehicle reportedly saw Adamson with a syringe poking out of her leg and a small plastic baggie containing brown powder, which she confirmed to officers was heroin. During a search at the county jail, deputies say that she then grabbed the bag of meth that she had concealed previously in her behind. She then put the baggie in her mouth and began to chew it. Adamson, who is currently in jail on a $22,000 bond, is scheduled to be arraigned on July 24th. Now, if you've seen my white-on-white crime series on this channel, then you should already know the standard script that the white authorities that be, from the white police to the white courts to the white media, of course, are going to follow. First of all, the white media hasn't given this incident much play. And what little reporting that they've done on it, they have all of them across the board attempted to downplay her heinous crime. You see, when white people are the ones who are getting locked up for drug abuse, have you ever noticed how they look like death warmed over? Now, I have no love in my heart for the Pookie, Ray Rays, and Shaniquas who go and get themselves busted for drugs. But the truth of the matter is the average drug addict who's black looks nowhere near as run over with an 18-wheeler as the average white drug addict. That's not being racist, it's just a fact. I mean, when white people decide to become junkies, they become junkies. Gotta give them that much, they don't play when it comes to going hardcore drug addict. Now, the first reporting about this incident, this woman in particular, the white media report said that she had been arrested for breaking the window to a car. That's the way that the white media reported it, but it's not until today that we finally get the real story. Over a week later, she had been trying to break into a car, and apparently she got into it. Now, see? When the suspect is white, the white media dances around whatever offenses they committed and tries to pretty it up and make it sound as minor as possible. The white media does the old whitewash white crimes routine. They don't tell us a single thing about this white woman's criminal history. Now, isn't that supposed to be standard operating procedure for people who are profiled on the news for being arrested? You're supposed to tell whatever crimes that they had previously engaged in. But the white media didn't, and this was uniform across the board. I'm not just talking about one or two sites. I went through at least 24 white media outlets covering this woman's arrest, and not one of them, not even one of them, gave us the rundown on this woman's criminal past. In fact, the closest that most of the so-called mainstream white media outlets came was a minor, small mention on WSVN's website, where they reported court documents said that an officer located the vehicle a short time later and recognized Adamson from a previous run-in with law enforcement. That's it. That's all it says. Recognized her from a previous run-in with law enforcement. Now, when you state it that way, you make it sound like, maybe she got pulled over for having an expired inspection sticker. In fact, they try to low-key hint at that with the way that they report on this little thing. It says the vehicle had expired tags and was pulled over, so you get the idea that, oh, well, whatever it was, it must have been pretty minor. Otherwise, the white media would have mentioned it, right? I mean, how are we to think that it was anything other than a minor offense that she got into it with the police for? They don't tell us her criminal history in WSVN's piece. When the suspect is white, they don't tell you a thing about their criminal record. But this is the house that Professor Truth built, so we keep digging until we find the dirt under the white criminal's nails because we know that it's there. Because it's not until you go to the Inquisitor's website that you finally get the information about Miss Adamson's criminal record. And it won't surprise you to learn that she has indeed had numerous run-ins with the law. In fact, that's being polite about it. She has multiple criminal charges dating back years, including several theft charges, as well as grand theft, larceny, and battery, not to mention multiple violations of jail rules. Well, I guess she's had a lot of practice at finding ways to violate the rules of the county jail. She's been doing it all of her adult life. In fact, just a few days prior to her latest arrest, on June 25th, she was arrested for disorderly conduct. But she's white, so you know how that turned out. Her bond for that crime was a measly $1,000, and she was immediately released. Well, after her latest arrest, that bond has been revoked, but I'm sure the court and the DA will see fit to give her another piddling bond so that she can get back out on the streets where she belongs. You know, the United States could easily eliminate the majority of crimes in the U.S. if only white people were actually punished for the offenses that they commit. But we live under white supremacy, which is wholly supported by the dominant society, the white majority, and they're dedicated to maintaining that revolving door that they have for themselves in the legal system. A two-tiered judicial system that mandates that white people only receive a slap on the wrist no matter how many crimes they commit. Now, this woman should have been knocked down under 3 strikes a long time ago, but she's white, so 3 strikes doesn't apply to her. As I always tell you, the laws weren't written to punish white people, they were written to punish black people. How much crime could easily be eliminated in the U.S. if only white offenders were actually ever punished for their crimes? So long as we have white supremacists in charge of the courts, the day of true justice and the day of white people being held accountable will never come. You need to start seeing what you can do about that at the local level. This is not to say that you can affect a wholesale turnover of leadership in the government, but you can make the odds even. But then again, the white media's efforts to cover up for this Adamson woman and her criminal career aren't over yet. Take a look at this video posted on the Palm Beach Post website. And by the way, do you notice how the Palm Beach Post sanitizes her crime? With the rather antiseptic headline, "Florida woman hides drugs in body during arrest." But they don't tell you where she hid them, at least not until later on in the story. See? Even when they report on it, they still don't report on it. This video is right on top of, above the story about this white drug addict. Before you even get the chance to read the story about her, the woman with the meth bag up her butt, they make sure that you see this video first. Why? Well, watch it for yourself.
America is still fighting its meth habit. After a brief lull caused by a crackdown on domestic manufacturing techniques, the highly addictive stimulant is blooming across the country again, this time in the shadows of the opioid epidemic. A study of meth was commissioned in Wisconsin, which estimated that its use had jumped by at least 250% since 2011, a pace that could overtake heroin. Researchers point out that meth addiction has always been a big problem in America. What's changed, they said, is a switch to mass production in Mexico, an increase in potency and affordability, and deeper penetration by drug cartels into vulnerable communities.
See, this is the propaganda arm of white supremacy at its lowest. If you're going to report on white criminality, you got to make sure that it's shown in as sympathetic a light as possible. You need people to understand why this is a human being. This is America's problem. Yeah, see, they're not trying to racialize meth use, even though 90+% of meth users, of the opioid addicts, are white people, but the white media never gives racial demographics. There's no ethnic breakdown reported in the white media when it comes to the opioid epidemic. They want to make sure that it stays in general terms. And the damned nerve of these people. They broke out the sad violins for this trailer ape. They put all the white media standard lies and lying rhetoric into this one, saying that America has a meth habit. America has a meth habit? No, white people have a meth habit. The rest of America, particularly black America, is fine when it comes to meth abuse. Thank you very much. It's white people who have the habit of smoking meth, shooting meth, and however else they get it into their veins and into their systems. It ain't black people's problem, it's white people's problem. But the thing is, black people don't count as America. Only white people count as America. So if white people have a problem, it isn't white people's problem, it's America's problem. If white people are in trouble, then America is in trouble. If black people are in trouble, well, it's just black America. It's not America in trouble, it's just black America. These are hardcore white supremacists that you're dealing with when it comes to the white media. They are as rabid and racist as they come. As far as they're concerned, they know exactly how bad the problem is, but they also know that they don't have any sort of fix for it. They don't have a means to sweep it under the rug anymore because thanks to the ubiquity of cell phone cameras and the internet, we can watch as white people overdose all the time, so the white media has been reduced to the old standby. Go ahead and break out the sad violins for them. Don't you dare put the police in front of the camera when talking about white meth abuse. Make sure you talk about the kids. Always put the kids out there. How this is damaging families. From the looks of things, these ain't families. These are just groupings of women who got themselves knocked up in the lousy males who they were shacking up with. But of course, we got to make sure that we humanize them. They're white, after all, and we don't want to have it where white people who commit crimes get lumped in with the black folks. Even though that is what they've done after 30 years of saying that all drug abuse, preaching the gospel of all drug abuse is a moral weakness on the behalf of the drug addict. That's what they've been talking about black people. You know, you don't have to sympathize with black folks. This is just a shared moral flaw. You know how those Negroes are. Well, after 30-plus years of indoctrinating people with that concept and never showing white people who are drug addicts, now that you're finally showing the white drug addicts, people can't help but have that knee-jerk reaction. Now, the white media is trying to get the ball rolling in the opposite direction and say, psst, psst, white people, no, not when it comes to white folks. It's black people who are the ones who can't help themselves. White people have a substance abuse problem. Black people just like drugs. That's what it is with them. They're trying to do the racialist double speak, but it's not exactly taking, though that's not for lack of trying. But the white media's video does speak a little bit of truth in spite of themselves. They admit that the problem is getting worse, and that meth use will soon overtake heroin use in the U.S. Well, as our good friend Adamson has shown, it already has overtaken meth use. See, that wasn't a heroin baggie that she had shoved up her pale ass. It was a meth baggie. What does that tell you? What that tells you is you can have my heroin, but you can't have my meth. Seriously, that's what she was basically saying with this action. Okay, I'll go to jail, but if I got a choice between trying to smuggle heroin into the jail and smuggling meth, well, I can't do without my meth. I mean, what the hell do you expect me to do? Just tough it out? But since these are white people we're talking about, their crimes are always ignored or otherwise labeled as something else, something minor, something clean. So in truth, white people can never get a full head count of how many of them are shooting meth because white people keep covering up the real numbers. They keep glossing it over and whitewashing it and hiding the numbers. They keep sitting here trying to downplay the stats so as to keep up the lie that white people are just law-abiding. You know, white people really care about the law. What is it I keep telling you? It's not who breaks the law that counts. It's who counts the lawbreakers. And this video also says that meth addiction has always been a big problem in America. Gee, then why hasn't the white media or the white politicians or white socialites ever talked about it and made it news before now? If it's always been a big problem, how come we ain't heard about it before now? Because the problem hadn't spilled out into the streets. They could always cover it up in the past. They had a complete media monopoly. They could control the narrative. They could control what people see and hear. Now they can't. Since they can't control it, now they're trying to put the right spin on it. Because we see there's just this flood, this tsunami of nauseating incidents of white drug users overdosing in public parks, in the McDonald's, and daycare centers, sitting in the car outside their kids' elementary schools. Oh, yes, indeed. When it comes to drug abuse, there is indeed a race of people in America with a shared moral flaw. But they ain't black people. And were it not for black people exposing this white opioid epidemic, posting the images and video of white people overdosing online, the white media would still be trying to pretend that this epidemic wasn't as bad as all that. And by the way, notice how this bullcrap video goes from talking about the domestic meth production, which is white corporations, to scapegoating Mexico. See, that's how the white media works. No matter what, you always got to make sure that even if you're blaming white people, you still don't blame white people. Sure, white people may be getting high, but it's because those Mexicans are making white people do it. Why? Those damn Mexicans, they make white people into addicts. Well, last time I checked, Pablo and Javier ain't running up on white people, putting them in a chokehold and saying, "Hey, Mr. White Man, you're going to shoot up meth. You're going to love this. We need the money." Nah, Mexicans ain't forcing white people to get high. They're choosing to get high. So if you're going to talk about the meth epidemic, you need to start with personal responsibility for white people. Have you ever noticed, though, that never makes it into any of the white media's stories about meth use? It doesn't, in fact, it doesn't make it into the story whenever they're reporting on white people's behavior. White politicians are corrupt? Well, white people don't have to take responsibility for their behavior. White police are murdering black people? Well, the police never have to take responsibility for their behavior. White meth users, they never have to take responsibility for their behavior. When you're white, you're never responsible for your behavior. It's everyone else who's responsible. The Mexicans are responsible. Black people are responsible. Mika Brzezinski told us all about that, remember? White people, though, nah, they're just innocent as the wind-driven snow. Okay, so you didn't want criminal penalties against white pharmaceutical companies who produce meth? And even though over half the meth used in the U.S. is still produced inside the U.S.'s borders, the white media tries to blame Mexico anyway, anyone but themselves. These people are more interested in saving face than they are in saving lives, even white lives. Now, when you have a group of people who have decided that their survival and their health and their longevity is going to take a back seat to psychologically masturbating themselves and trying to keep up their false, fake, hollow, grandiose image of white moral exceptionalism, that's a group of people on self-destruct. If you have a problem this bad, it's time to put aside all of the stupid, pathetic white pretenses of, we're just more moral than everyone else, don't you know? And admit, as white people, we've been indulging ourselves. As white people, we've had 500 years of having it easy. And we've had 500 years of immunity from law, and this has culminated in the fact that as white people, you can't tell us nothing, we can't do any better, and we're not going to change. And we need to if we're going to survive. That's the conversation white people should be having with themselves. But it's a conversation that has never taken place with white people on any level at any time. Doesn't matter if it's slavery, doesn't matter if it's national security, doesn't matter if it's education, crime, drugs, media, what have you. When it comes to white people, they never have to ask themselves what they need to change about themselves. There is no national conversation among white people about how they need to improve themselves. After all, when you're perfect, what is there to change? Well, the meth epidemic is a monster that will rot the white community from the inside out. And these are self-inflicted wounds that you're seeing. Look at the pockmarked face on this broad. Her face looks like the surface of the moon after an asteroid collision. But this is what white pride has come to. They could turn the situation around, but first they have to admit that there's something wrong with their behavior. And that would mean admitting that there was something wrong with them, and in 500 years they have never done that. America has a problem, not white people. Well, you keep going ahead and putting on those race-neutral blinders, or rather those white-specific race-neutral blinders. Keep doing that. By refusing to own up to their addiction and to admit that they are the face of drug addiction and drug-related crimes, they refuse to face up to the magnitude of this epidemic. And this is not a game. This is not a joke. When it comes to drugs, that's the kind of problem that tends to become generational. It not merely derails your life, but it also becomes a problem for your children because they grew up in a house watching mom and dad shooting up. And its catastrophic effects are not going to go away simply because white people desperately wish that they could hide the embarrassment. They could pretend it wasn't there and just look away. Hiding their heads in the sand guarantees that this is going to get worse. And that's exactly what's happening. Now, as black people, though, we have a part that we can play in helping our good white neighbors with their meth habit, because it is their habit. Oh, what is a black neighbor to do? Well, the first thing that we can do is to push for the hardest penalties possible. Mandatory sentencing guidelines off the bat. Ain't no 3 strikes, ain't no 1 strike, just you're out. This way, white judges can't avoid giving these dangerous criminals the maximum sentence. You know, like they did for this Adamson character in the past, where every time you looked up, she was getting arrested for theft charges, grand theft, larceny, battery, violations of jail rules. This ain't the first time she snuck drugs into the county lockup. It's just the first time we're hearing about it, but the white judges always give her a slap on the wrist. $1,000 fine. Gee, that means for $100 she can get out. So go ahead and take the sentencing power out of the hands of these white judges, but more importantly than that, hold the white judges accountable for white drug abuse. Let's have the inverse effect of Willie Horton. Whenever white judges and white DAs and white lawmakers don't get tough on white crime, hold them accountable. Make it where any time that a white person commits a drug-related offense, a white junkie commits a crime, you go ahead and handcuff the white judge to that. Make them synonymous with the white criminals that they keep putting back out on the streets. We should be asking who the hell it was who Adamson was standing in front of in the past who decided to let her go. Who is it who lets all these white meth addicts back out on the streets so they can commit crimes over and over again? Put a name on it. Put a judge's name on it. This judge keeps letting white offenders go all the time, and look at the crimes they commit when they get back out. Nah, we need to get tough on white crime, because white crime is America's problem. Judges who refuse to give the hardest penalties should be identified as being soft on crime, because that's what they are. DAs who want to talk that mamby-pamby rehab instead of incarceration crap need to be pointed out and identified. White politicians and white lawmakers who refuse to make it where punishing white drug abuse is their top priority, they need to be pointed out. Meth users must get the harshest penalties possible. Full stop. Meth use is a criminal justice issue, and it can be solved by zero tolerance. If you want to hold public office, then the first question you should get from black people, right after we ask how much money you're going to earmark for black business grants, the second question should be, and what laws are you going to push for to punish meth use? Make it part of the political discussion, but ain't going to be none of this Chris Christie. Well, we need to ask about rehabilitation. These are people that we know. These are friends and family. Nah, these are white folks. That's what that means. We don't need to waste money on rehab. After all, these white people who get sent to rehab, all they do is they stay in for about 1 or 2 days, and as soon as whatever drugs they give them to help them deal with the withdrawals begin to lose their punch, the white people immediately walk out and just walk away. If they go to rehab, the first thing they try to do is to stockpile whatever those placebo drugs are, whatever the drugs are that they give people to deal with, to help take the edge off of their withdrawals. Instead, what they do is they start stockpiling that stuff and getting high off of that. It's a scam. And we need to stop pretending like it's anything other than that. They're gaming the system like they always do. And the white media and white politicians and the white public in general are letting them get away with it. Well, no more. No more. This Adamson woman, she is the face of white America. She's the face of addiction in America. And it is an ugly face indeed. And the worst part about it is they wouldn't have it any other way.